the field that breathes. I had never meant to be on most roads. The plan was simple. Leave the city after work, drive for 3 hours, and stay the night at my aunt's cottage in the coast. She left me the keys in an envelope with her neighbor, told me to help myself to the pantry, and enjoy the quiet. I was looking forward to it, a weekend away from everything, but when a last-minute meeting kept me late, and the ongoing train strike left me no choice but to drive, the whole trip began on the wrong note. I checked the route on my phone before leaving. A tangle of roads that eventually gave way to a smaller country lanes. The map showed an estimated arrival time of just after midnight. By the time I reached the outskirts of the countryside, the orange sodium glow of the city had long vanished. The sky above was a smear of low cloud. No stars, no moon. My headlights picked out only the narrow ribbon of tarmac in front of me, flanked on either side by hedgerows so high they seemed to lean inward, their dark tangle of branches closing me in. I'd driven through rural areas before, but this was different. Out here, there were no occasional farmhouses with warm windows, no parked cars, no distant glow of another road, just miles of winding lanes, and that claustrophobic blackness pressing against the glass. The first strange thing I noticed was how still it was. I cracked the window once, thinking the fresh air might help keep me alert, but there was no rustle of leaves, no faint hum of insects, not even the whisper of the wind. It felt like the entire countryside was holding its breath. Second thing I noticed was that I hadn't passed a single other car in over half an hour. No headlights ahead, no red taillights in the mirror, just me, cocooned in darkness. I was navigating by the phone clamped to my dashboard, but somewhere past a crooked sign for a village I didn't recognize, the signal dropped. The little blue dot froze mid-turn, then vanished altogether, leaving only a pale map that refused to load. I tapped the screen, gasped under my breath, and decided to keep going. Eventually, I told myself I'd find a bigger road, a signpost, something. I drove on, slower now, the beam of the headlights catching nothing but hedges and bends. Every so often I glimpsed a break in the green wall, a gap that might have been a gateway, or just a place where the hedge had thinned. But I never saw more than a few yards into the fields beyond. It was at one of these gaps that I saw the gate. I was coming down a slight incline when the road widened, just enough for a small lay-by. To my right, a wooden gate stood between two leaning posts. It was weathered and pale with age, streaked with moss. The top rail was warped and sagged in the middle. Beyond it, a narrow dirt track led away, sloping down into a field shrouded in mist. The fog seemed thicker there than anywhere else I'd seen, almost milky in its density, clinging to the ground in slow, swirling currents. I pulled over without really deciding to. It wasn't that I thought I'd find anything useful down there. I wasn't lost enough yet to go wandering off, but something about that gate was curious, almost familiar, though I couldn't think why. I turned off the engine. The sudden silence was startling. Without the low rumble of the car, I became aware again of just how dead the air was. Even my breathing seemed louder than it should be. I stepped out, the cold damp clinging intimately to my clothes. There was that faint metallic tang in the air, sharp enough for taste, like rust or wet pennies. I walked to the gate, touched the top of the rail. The wood was soft, spongy in places, as though it had been soaking for years. The latch was nothing more than a loop of corroded metal. When I lifted it, it came free without resistance, though the greenish corrosion flaked under my fingers. The sensible thing would have been to get back in the car, but the track seemed to pull at me in a way I can't quite explain, as though stepping onto it was the natural next step. My shoes swirled slightly as I crossed the threshold. The mist swallowed me almost immediately. It wasn't like ordinary fog, where you can still make out vague shapes in the distance. Here, visibility shrank to a few meters in every direction. The beam from my phone's flashlight illuminated nothing but wet grass and the faint brown ribbon of the track beneath my feet. The hedges were gone, replaced by open space, but that openness felt long, I couldn't tell if the field was vast or if the fog was enclosing me in something much smaller. I walked for what I guess was maybe 100 yards before I saw the first post. It was about chest height, velvet grey like the gate, leaning slightly to one side. A thin strand of rusted wire was looped around it, trailing into the grass. Then there was another post a few yards beyond, and another. They weren't lined up like fence posts should be. Instead, they stood alone, scattered seemingly at random, each one leaning in its own way. Some were snapped off entirely, jagged splinters jutting upward. The air grew colder, the further I went. The metallic tang sharper. My breath clouded in front of me. I glanced back once, half expecting to see the glow of the road behind me, but there was nothing, just the same thick mist, the same silent posts fading into it. That's when I heard it, a sound that seemed to come from all directions at once. A long, slow exhalation, not quite human, not quite wind, but something in between. It was so low and drawn out that I felt it in my chest as much as I heard it. And then, silence. I tried to laugh it off, just a breeze, but the air was perfectly still. I kept walking, aiming for a darker patch in the fog that I thought might be a tree line, but when I reached it, it was only more posts, leaning toward me now, their wires trembling as though something had pushed past them. The sigh came again, closer this time. I picked up my pace. My foot caught on something in the grass, and I nearly went sprawling. When I looked down, I saw a loop of thick rope, frayed at the edges, half buried in the soil. It was tied into a knot I didn't recognize, intricate, almost deliberate. There were more knots scattered across the ground as I walked, some just visible beneath the grass, some protruding from the soil like veins. The sigh became rhythmic, long, slow exhalations that seemed to pull at the mist, making it billow slightly with each breath. My own breathing began to sync with it without my meaning to, until I realized I was inhaling and exhaling in time with whatever was making the sound. When I tried to break the rhythm, the air seemed heavier, resisting me. I don't know how long I wandered. My phone's clock froze at 1:14 a.m. My flashlight dimmed to a thin yellow glow, but I kept going. At one point, I became aware of the shapes moving in the mist. Not quickly, but with a slow, deliberate shifting, as though the fog itself was thickening into something solid. A pale bulge would form, swirl slightly, then melt away again. I began to feel that the posts were not separate objects at all, but part of something larger beneath the ground. Only the tips visible. The ground softened, each step sinking slightly. The ropes grew more frequent, some twisted around the base of posts, others snaking into the mist. The sigh rose. It came almost a hum, resonating in my bones. I couldn't tell if it was above me or below me. My legs felt heavy, my movements sluggish, as though the air itself was thickening. I knew then, with sudden and absolute certainty, that if I stopped walking, I would not start again. So I ran. The mist pressed against me, dense and cold, clinging to my clothes and hair. The sigh quickened, each exhalation shorter, more urgent. The posts loomed out of the fog like pale, leaning sentinels, forcing me to weave between them. The darker patch ahead became a strip of grey, light. I pushed toward it, heart pounding, lungs burning, and then I burst out onto a wide tarmac road. Dawn had begun to rise, painting the fields in pale silver. My car was there, the driver's door still open, engine cold. The clock on the dashboard read 6:02 a.m. I drove without stopping until the countryside gave way to houses, then to the main road. I haven't been back, but sometimes in the dead stillness of night, when the wind drops and the air hangs heavy, I hear it, that slow, deep sigh, and I know that the field is still there, breathing in and out, waiting.